Page number 34. He was clever too, the way he could read the messages of the people's heart and tell what diseases they were suffering from, by means of that machine with rubber tubes, the ends of which he applied to his ears and whose mouth he rested on the chest of a person. He had other machines in velvet boxes. How he would like, the end of page 34, page number 35, to handle them. Munnu thought how he would like to be Chota Babu, a medicine man. He would not even mind being the Bada Babu, an official in the bank whom all the townsmen saluted. But so he was disturbed, his consciousness extending from his person to which, with curious naivete and accidental profundity, it had traced itself beyond the circle of the home into the town where his master was a slave to someone else. His ego, conditioned by the laws and customs of the society in which he had been born, the society whose castes and classes and forms had been determined by the self-seeking of the few, of the powerful, sought all the prizes of wealth, power and possession exactly as his superiors sought them. If only the shimmering waves which struggled to flow along the well-worn grooves in his brain had not ended in the confusion of froth, they might have revealed to him potentialities in his make-up hitherto unknown to him. The bottom would then have been knocked out of his hedonism, 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 and he would have discovered the fatuity of his desire to be like his superiors. Fatuity, Fatuity, fatuity. But the stories of his ancestors, the stories of his village, the stories of his province, his country, which he had read at school and excelled at remembering, had all been records of the desire for power, the desire for property, and the desire for honor of a few chosen men. And like every child in the world, like most grown-ups even, he had been blinded by the glamour of greatness, the glory and splendor of it, into forgetting that he was condemned by an iniquitous system always to remain small, abject and drab. Iniquitous, Iniquitous. The biological expedient, however, which made him want to live was forcing the multicolored cells in his body to reach out instinctively to the space about him, even for the breath of the foul air in his master's dingy little kitchen and for a crust of bread. He was vaguely aware of the need for love in his orphan's body, but he was as yet essentially an ineffectual pawn on the chessboard of destiny, such as the village priest had declared all men to be, with perverted ambitions in a world of perverted ideas, and he was to remain a slave until he should come to recognize his instinct. These people were superior to all the hill people, he thought, though they were superior to the retired Subedar of the village and Jai Singh's father, the landlord, he wondered. What, end of page 35, now page 36, constituted their superiority, he did not know. Bhul. What constituted their superiority, he did not know. They all wore nice clothes, had nice things. That was enough to convince him that they were marvelous, wonderful people. He did not search for causes and effects. He did not know that the superciliousness, the complacency, the assurance, the happiness they radiated was built on the strong foundation of money. That easy, privileged and secure life of theirs had good health. That good health was nourished by the food which money bought. Superciliousness, NESS, superciliousness, and thus thoroughly convinced of his inferiority, accepting his position as a slave, he tried to instill into his mind the notions of his brutishness that his mistress had so often nagged him about, and he promised himself again that he would be a good servant, a perfect model of a servant. Unfortunately, however, the road to perfection is punctuated by pitfalls, and it was not long before he tripped up and brought the odium of his mistress's wrath upon himself. Odium, O-D-I-U-M, odium. It so happened that Mr. W.P. England came to tea with Babu Nathuram and family one afternoon. Mr. England was the chief cashier of the Shamnagar branch of the Imperial Bank of India, in whose office Babu Nathuram was a sub-accountant. He was a tall Englishman with an awkward, shuffling gait, accentuated by the wooden wooden angular shape of his feet, marching always hesitantly at an angle of 45 degrees and with a small, lined, expressionless face, which defined by the thick glasses on his narrow, myopic eyes. He had rather good-natured smile on his thin lips, and it was that which led to the tea party. Babu Nathuram had seen his smile play upon Mr. England's lip every morning when the Sahib said good morning to him in response to his salute. There seemed little doubt that it was a kind smile which beckoned the kindness of Mr. England's heart, exactly as the frown on the face of Robert Horne, Esquire, manager of the Imperial Bank of India, Shamnagar, betokened a vicious temperament. But then Mr. England spoke so few words. The smile might just be a patronizing put-on affair, and it was very important to Babu Nathuram's purpose to know whether it was a genuine smile or an assumed one, for he wanted a recommendation from Mr. England to support his application for an increase in salary and promotion to the position of the accountant. He had aspired to this position for a long time now, but he had not been able to attain it. End of page 36 and beginning of page 37, because Babu Afzal al-Haq occupied it as he had occupied it for the last 20 years. Mr. England was a new officer. The Babu wanted to get him to write a recommendation before he was influenced by all the other English officers in the club and began to hate all Indians before the kind smile on his lips became a smile of contempt and derision, or before it became sardonic on account of the weather. So he did not wait till he got to know Mr. England better, nor till Mr. England got to know his work a little more, but he asked him to tea. It had taken a great deal of courage, of course, and a lot more effort for him to ask Mr. England to tea. At first, he had tried several mornings to muster enough courage to say something beyond the usual, "Good morning, sir." There seemed to be nothing to make the basis of an exchange of words, and not even file or letter, because they met on arrival at the office before the mail had arrived. And later in the day, there was much too much to say about files for an informal exchange of ideas. Babu Nathuram began to contemplate England's ever-ready smile with a certain exasperation, and he believed more than ever that these Englishmen were very slippery and confounding, because they were so reticent, just gaping at you without talking and without letting you talk. Then someone, it was a barrister friend of Nathuram's, told him that from his experience in England, he had found that the only way of starting a conversation with an Englishman was just by talking to him about the weather. "Good morning, sir," said Babu Nathuram respectfully every morning without daring to use the new knowledge. "Good morning," mumbled England, with always smiling his nice smile, but rather self-conscious because he saw that the Babu was older than he by at least 20 years, and his reverence seemed rather out of place. Besides, the Babu was a rich man. He had 40,000 rupees worth of shares in the Allahabad Bank and was surely a trusted ally of the government, which owned most of the banks. He certainly was highly thought of and honored by the English directors of most of the banks. But why did he not live up to his status? Horn was right. Horne, Horn was right. He reflected when he said that these Indians were embarrassingly obsequious. He did not ask, however, why they were obsequious. End of page 37, now page 38. Nathuram walked sheepishly behind Mr. England in the hall one day, and Sahib was rather ill at ease as he stepped angularly along in the cool shades and cast by the drawn blinds on the windows. "Fine morning, sir. Beautiful day," announced Nathuram suddenly. Mr. England shuffled his feet, hesitated and turned round if a thunderbolt had struck him. His face was suddenly pale with peevishness. Then he controlled himself and, smiling a sardonic smile, said, "Yes, of course, very fine, very beautiful." The Babu did not understand the sarcasm implicit in the Sahib's response. He was mightily pleased with himself that he had broken the ice, although he could not muster the courage to say anything more and ask him to tea. That he did after sitting in the office for whole days, waiting in suspense for the right moment to come. It came when England, seeking to relieve the tension and to put Nathuram at ease, approached the Babu's table one day before going off to lunch. "How are you, Nathuram?" he asked. "Fine morning, sir," said Nathuram, suddenly looking up from the ledger and springing to attention as he balanced his pen, Babu-like, across his ear. "Yes, a bit too fine for my taste," replied England. "Yes, sir," said Nathuram, wondering what to say. That was an awkward pause in which England looked at the Babu and the Babu looked at England. "Well, I am off to lunch," said the Sahib, "though I can't eat much in this heat." "Sir," said the Babu, jumping at his chance, "you must eat Indian food. It is very tasty." He couldn't utter the words fast enough. "The khansama at the club cooks curry sometimes," returned England. "I don't like it much. It is too hot." "Sir, my wife cooks very good curries. You must come and taste one of our dishes," ventured Nathuram, tumbling over his words. "No, I don't like curries," said England. "Thank you very much all the same." And smiling in his charming smile, he made to go. He had realized that he was becoming too familiar with the native, a thing his friends at the club had warned him about. "Will you come to see my house one day, sir?" called Nathuram eagerly and with a beating heart. "My wife would be honored." End of page 38. Now page 39. If you would condescend to favor us with the presence of your company at tea, sir, Mr. Brother, sir. England had almost moved his head in negation, but he ducked it to drown his confusion. Yes, sir, today." "No," said England, "no, perhaps some day." After that, Nathuram had positively pestered England with his invitation to tea. Every time he met him, morning, evening, afternoon, he requested the favor of Mr. England's gracious and benign condescension at tea. At last, England agreed to come one day a week hence. For a week, preparations for this party went on in Babu's household, and Munnu had more than his share of the excitement. The carpets were lifted and dusted, and though all the paraphernalia of the Babu's household, pictures, bottles, books, utensils, and children's toys and clothes lay in their original confusion, a rag was passed over everything to make it neat and respectable. The news of the Sahib's projected visit to Babu Nathuram's house had spread all over the town, and in the neighbouring houses, dirty sackcloth curtains were hung up to guard female decorum from the intrusion of foreign eyes. As Mr. England walked up, stupidly dressed for the occasion in a warm navy blue suit, with Nathuram on one side and Premchand, the Babu's doctor brother, on the other, and with Dayaram, the Chaprasi, in full regalia following behind, he felt hot and bothered. Between mopping his brow with a large silk handkerchief and blushing at the Babu's reiterated gratitude and flattery, England wondered what Nathuram's house was going to be like. Would it be like his father's home in Brixton, a semi-detached house on the hay mill estate, which they had furnished on the hire purchase system with the help of Mr. Drake, and where he had occupied the maid's room when he was a clerk in the Midland Bank, before he came here and suddenly became a chief cashier? Or would it be like the house of Abdul Karim the Hindu in that Hollywood film called The Swami's Curse, with fountains in the hall around which danced various wives of the Babu in clinging draperies and glittering ornaments? The outlook of the flat-roofed hovels jutting into each other, on the uprise of which the Babu pointed, was rather disconcerting. End of page 39. Now page 40. Sahib, Sahib, a cry went out, and there was a note of several people rushing behind sackcloth curtains. The Mohammedans keep strict parda, sir, informed Babu Nathuram, and it is the women of the household of Babu Afzal al-Haq running to hide themselves. They running to hide themselves. Fate is favourable, the Babu thought, for he had been able to have a dig at his Mussalman adversary. Mr. England smiled in a troubled manner as he looked aside. "Look out," Dr. Premchand called. "Your head." Mr. England just missed hitting his forehead against the narrow doorway which led beyond the small veranda into the Babu's sitting room. The pink of his face heightened to purple. There was hardly any room to stand or to walk in the low-ceilinged 6 by 10 room, especially as both Nathuram and Dayaram had rushed to get a chair ready for the Sahib to sit on. Mr. England stood looking round at the junk. He felt as tall as Nelson's column in this crowded atmosphere. He could not see much, but as he sank into a throne-like chair, he faced the clay image of the elephant god Ganesha, garlanded with a chain of faded flowers. He thought it a sinister image, something horrible, one of the heathen idols which he had been taught to hate in the Western chapel he had attended with his mother. "The god of wisdom, worldliness and wealth, sir," said Baba Nathuram, defining his words rather pompously, so as he knew His illiterate wife was overhearing him talk English to a sahib, so on an equal footing, for once in his life. Interesting, mumbled Mr. England. I hope to go to England for higher studies, Mr. England, said Dr. Premchand, more at ease because he was an independent practitioner of medicine and not the sahib's subordinate like his elder brother. Yes, really, remarked England, brightening to the suggestion of home, as all Englishmen in India learn to do. I suppose you have a big residence there, asked Premchand, and perhaps you could give me some advice about my courses of study. Yes, said England in reply, blushing to realize that though he had to pose as a big top to these natives, he had no home to speak of. End of page 40. Now page 41. The semi-detached house in Brixton being not yet paid for, and he remembered that he had never been to a university and knew nothing about the courses of study except those of Pitman's typing and shorthand school in Southampton Row, which he had attended for the season before going to the Midland Bank. He felt that he should make a clean breast of it all, as he was really extremely honest. But his compatriots at the club had always exhorted him to show himself off as the son of King George himself, if need be. A guilty conscience added its weight of misery to his embarrassment.